All right, we should be up in just a second. Waiting to hear from Laura. Should be in 3, 2, 1. Are we there yet? Oh, Laura says we're not there yet. Upcoming. And we are live. We're live. Here we are. Awesome. Good afternoon. It's Friday afternoon, 2 p.m. Did you just see that thing that was flying around in here?
No.
That's okay. So there was like this little white thing flying around me, and that like used to happen to Laura. And lately that's been happening. Like when I say some weird significant thing, there's these little white things that fly around, but there's like nothing in the apartment, right? It's like some weird UFO, like a lint UFO or something like that. I don't know.
Was the good afternoon, it's Friday afternoon, the significant thing?
That's the cue to our handlers at the YouTube intelligence agency to start listening, right? So.
Dude, they really don't want anyone coming on our live. I've been so shadow banned this week ever since I posted about our word salad.
Like I don't know if that's just something. Like, it never even occurs to me to think about or check about that. It's like some things I do seem to get a lot of likes, some don't. I just assume some people like me, some people don't. Like I never think about that. But yeah. Well, the cue came and it's the lint UFO. That's how we know. I'm going to start paying attention to exactly what I'm talking about when the lint UFO comes, because it's
you need a lint UFO journal.
I mean, like what, you know how like when cats do that, like there'll be like some little piece of lint floating and they're having like some extreme reaction. Like maybe they know that the lint is where the aliens really are, and that shit in the sky is just the government, and who cares about that shit, right?
I think, well, remember Men in Black where it was like the cat's
totally
the cat's collar was the thing.
Yeah, right. What was the name of that cat again? Michael and I did an entire one of our first, like I think like one of the first, it was in the first 5. Was all about the Men in Black and the kitty's collar.
Really? I have no idea. I saw it once. I can't. It's not worth a rewatch for me.
Well, because the cat had a glass bead around its neck, and that glass bead was the world, right?
Yes.
It was like part of our early, we were looking for all the ways we could find references or something to glass bead, right? So yeah. Anywho, so that one's there. I'll send it to you so you can check it out. It was a good one, right? The Men in Black is not a movie I ever saw until like 2 years ago. But yeah, that first Men in Black especially was like a damn good documentary. It was pretty much accurate. So
cool.
Yeah. All right. How you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, everything's been weird. Like my biorhythms are totally off. I'm like rolling a different way, but everything feels really good.
You normally just roll at raves or parties, and now you're rolling at home, or like, what's the deal?
Defining that term. I've just seemed to have been taken on like a different, I told you I started work last night at like 11 o'clock. And I think I'm still in birthday celebrating mode. Like this is the longest I've extended the birthday celebration. So everything's just like play and have fun and nothing else matters.
Exactly was your birthday? Because I think it was while I was dealing with all the craziness. My dad and my nephew have birthdays this weekend. When is your birthday?
The 21st of January.
Yeah, it was when all the craziness was happening. So happy belated birthday. I knew you were an Aquarius, but yes, that is a long birthday celebration. That's pretty extensive.
Oh, I'm taking it through to the end of Aquarius season.
Do you remember that when On It first started, Roll On and Roll Off were one of their first products? Do you remember that?
No.
Oh yeah. Okay. So when Aubrey Marcus first announced his On It products, like when he was on that time, remember, I'm just going to guess that this was the same for you as it was for me. But the first time I remember Aubrey Marcus on, which doesn't mean it was the first time he was actually on, but like the first one I heard, he was talking about his ayahuasca trip in the Amazon and how it inspired him to come back and start this nootropics company. And at that point, they had like Alpha Brain, and they had like one mushroom supplement, and then they had these supplements called Roll On and Roll Off. And
wait. Once again, we're going to need to roll it back. So Aubrey goes to Peru to do ayahuasca. At that point, I'm guessing he's a fleshlight salesman, and something comes through this medicine that says, you need to start making brain supplements
Right.
with your zero qualifications.
Correct.
So I feel like we can safely say that that was like the CIA in Peru with him, or what kind of frequencies were being embedded in what he was drinking. But please continue.
Okay, so I have something to say about that in just a second, but for now, so then there was this product called Roll On and Roll Off, right? And Roll On would be you take this before you go out for a night of partying, and Roll Off is you take this when you get home from a night of partying. So it's basically easing your way, setting your system up to accept the experience, and then helping you ease back into life, right? And of course, like a dutiful mind-controlled idiot that I was at the time, was like, ooh, alpha brain, ding, I'll take one of those. Ew, right? Roll on, roll off. Like, I think I finished the whole bottle of Alpha Brain. I don't think I ever remembered to take Roll On or Roll Off, because like the way that the partying worked for me is there was like maybe a break for a day or two on like Tuesday and Wednesday, or Wednesday and Thursday of the drug taking. But then the meth use started before I went out for the weekend, where there might be mushroom or whatever kind of thing. And so by the time it was time to take the Roll On, I was like already high, and like, who cares about nootropics when you're already high, right? So I don't think I ever took them. And when we sold the house in Chatsworth and I was cleaning out, I found all the packages of Roll On and Roll Off in like one of the bathroom drawers. And it didn't come in like a bottle, like the Alpha Brain or like the other supplements. It came in like when you go to the gas station and you're like, dude, I need some like legal tweak to help me be up to make this long ride across country or whatever. And it's like in a plastic thing with little, like your Advil comes in at the gas station or whatever, where just like there's a little plastic around like each capsule. And there was like 3 or 4 capsules in each package and whatnot. And I think it was like, one of them was orange and one of them was purple. So it was like reinforcing my Geo mind control program as well, right?
Was it for any substance, or did they specify like this is best for opiates? Or
I think by the name Roll On and Roll Off, it was probably
that
was probably, I don't know about you. Like, I don't have really any trouble recovering from mushrooms or acid, but from ecstasy was difficult recovery sometimes.
Worst. Literal worst. Like, for me, it would take me out for a whole week, and I'd be like holding my stomach and telling my friends, like, never let me do that again. And then 2 weeks later, it was like, I forgot.
So for some people, it was like a physiological hardship, and for others, a psychological hardship. Like they would call it Suicide Tuesdays, because you had like the best night of your life on Saturday night at the rave, and then by Tuesday you wanted to kill yourself. And right. So I think people would take 5-HTP, and I can't remember if the 5-HTP was like before or after, and there was like one other. So I think it was I'm sure that stuff was in it. Right. But I think that was the idea, is that like, okay, our people are going to be going to festivals. Like this was in the early, like Burning Man, Lightning in a Bottle days and things like that. There was just starting to be more and more of these like 3 and 4 day festivals. Right. And so I think that was the audience that it was sort of speaking to, per se. But yeah, so that's an episode in the Aubrey Marcus evolution that not very many people remember, but I do.
And now he's a thought leader telling us what to think.
Correct. I think his latest post today was about just getting the dosage right? Like cannabis is good for everybody. It's just making sure you get the dosage just right, So anywho, that was not it. I'm great. I'm good. It feels good to be working. Like I took last week off of work because I went home to spend some quality time with my mom. She's still with us, but just barely. And so I'm glad that I went last week and got some quality time while there was still some level of consciousness. But I don't do so well with not working. Like, so that's harder for me. So, and then we got back here and there was this like faux winter storm, like it rains and freezes a little bit and everyone's like, oh my God, it's a snow apocalypse. Let's all stay home for 3. Like their shit's still not open. Right? Like it's weird. Right? Their shit's still not open. But then, so coming back and then not really being able to do much for a couple of days, like it was nice to rest, but I really cope with my emotions better when I'm working for myself. Yeah. So it's good to be back to work. it's weird to call this thing that you and I do together work, because it's really not, because like as soon as the show ends, we're on the phone doing it anyway.
I know, we do it anyway. But I think why it's good for us to call it work is because we're making so much money per episode. So I think it's good reinforcing.
I don't know if we're making so much money per episode, but we're definitely generating a very large economy for others.
Indeed, we are.
So anywho, so I'm good. I'm, obviously it's a challenge what's going on with my mother. My relationship with her has always been challenging. And so the experience I'm having of this is not probably the typical that most people have. I think most people either I'm sure I understand there's a wide spectrum, but like generally people have a really good relationship with their mother. And so it's like awful, or they have a really bad relationship with their mother. And so it's either like, thank God, or it's awful in a different way. And for me, it was like a combination. Like my mom's a very nice person. She was never bad to me or awful to me or anything. She just very limited capability as like a caretaking or, motherly kind of role. And so it's just a different relationship than a lot of people have with their mother, and certainly different than the kind of relationship I have with my father. So I'm conflicted in some ways, but mostly she's a very nice person. So like you feel bad. But it's just, it's been an interesting array of feelings and emotions. So working is good. And they certainly have tried to overwhelm us with things that we need to talk about, since it's been several weeks since we've done a show, and several lengthy episodes of things to cover.
Which I think is worth noting, because I feel like they definitely did that on purpose. Like they just flooded us with every single person that you and I personally cover within 1 week's time.
Well, I think it's so like, yes, there's a part of me, there are many me's, and there's one part of me, the part that is like the absolute center of the universe, that is like, oh, this is all because of us. And then there's the other person that just observes from far away, that is like, oh no, there's just a shifting of ops going on right now. And so it's just moving everybody into place. Right. And I think I can identify what the shift that's happening right here is. Yeah. And so I think that like, that's the main thing as we try to curate ourselves, because we're trying a tight time shift today.
We're 16 minutes in and have said nothing.
I've said absolutely nothing. But I do want to say to people, over the next couple of months, we are experimenting a bunch with like format, what we're doing, how we're doing it, for a variety of reasons, to keep it fresh and exciting for us, to keep it informative and entertaining for you, and also to make the biggest pain in the asses of ourselves that we possibly can, while squeaking out just the tiniest bit of a living, right?
We're expanding a massive living.
Massive.
We're living larger than we ever have because of our show.
All right. So you guys are going to see a lot of different things, and it will settle in where it wants to settle in. And we're open to any and all constructive feedback from the Peanut Gallery, who we love. Okay.
Constructive being the key word.
So unfortunately, most of this is going to have to be based around episodes of the Joe Rogan podcast that have happened over the last few weeks. And then like some connections to other things. We're going to save one of them for the afterwards salon, out of respect for a minuscule relationship with one of the contestants on the Dope Show. And so we'll be talking about that part in the afterwards salon, which you can all join us in if you are any kind of supporter of either or both of ours anywhere. You've already received the link. If not, we'll be offering a promo code before we sign off here on the public part. So anyone who isn't yet can come over and join us. Wordspodcast.locals.com. Promo code is welcome to words in all capital letters, all one word, but I'll put it in the link at the end. So I think we're going to circle this a little bit around the public hour here, around the Lex Fridman, Joe Rogan episode, and just relationship in general. As well as some of the Jordan Peterson There was also a Brett Weinstein episode a few weeks back, and he's been making the rounds. He was also on the Paul Bet David podcast recently. And you said he did something with Daniel Schmachtenberger that I haven't had a chance to look at
so
yet.
that was from Chris. And Chris, I got your apologies, so thank you. There was a mistake. It wasn't something new. So there was
an old thing. Okay.
So no.
Okay. So that's off the, okay. Woo! One thing off. Okay. Yeah, like, so we're there. Okay. One less vegetable in the salad. All right. Okay. So, but I think what we should start with is there have been at least 2 other people who have finally woken up to the Lex Fridman shit psyop or whatever the heck it is. I want to remind everybody that you saw this here first, probably, I think we first started being like, what the fuck, about 6 months ago, but we delivered like some of the damning evidence back, late last fall and into the early winter. But Glenn Greenwald and Darren Beatty, who aren't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I do at this point, I feel like both of them are mostly organic actors, even if we disagree with them. Like, I don't think they are coming from the same place. I don't think that they're like joyfully participating in the op. I think that they have maybe different thoughts and ideas than we do. So we're not always in agreement, which is fine. And I think they have found themselves being tools at certain times. And then as soon as they figure it out, they get out of that and attempt to do something independently, which then later also gets co-opted and they have to do it again, right? But this is part of this reality. So it doesn't surprise me that these are the 2 that have gotten to this, but I feel like they've taken a certain perspective on the Lex Fridman psyop, which everything they say is 100% true. And I invite them to join us in the deeper meaning of said conversation about Lex Fridman. And if those of you who enjoy our nonsense would like to clip it, maybe we'll get JP to clip it so for easy distribution. But this portion and love bomb Glenn Greenwald and Darren Beatty with this segment, and maybe they'll be willing to come on our show or have us on their show or something like that, so we can have a Lex Fridman free for all. Then we'd definitely be down for that. I'm going to let you have your say here, and then we will go to the clips.
No, I think just take us to the clips. For me, it was so validating.
It's so gratifying. It was like, yeah.
Yeah, anytime I hear someone else talking about what we're talking about, it's super gratifying. So yeah, let's just jump to the clips.
Okay, so let me just so there's 2 things. So there was, Darren Beatty did an 8-minute video rant about Lex Fridman that I'm just going to play I think I'm just going to try and play just the audio from these. If we can make that come through so that, well, I don't think it'll be a problem with Rumble. I'm just going to play.
Fair use.
Okay. Yeah. We appreciate what you did, and we are doing this to promote you. Everybody, I will include the links to both episodes on Rumble of Glenn Greenwald's show and Darren Beatty's channel. So go there, listen to the full thing, support them. Okay. So I'm going to play first the Glenn Greenwald's little opening bit about Lex Fridman before he interviews Darren Beatty. I'm not going to play the Darren Beatty interview with him because it's too long. I'll link that in the show notes. After, when this is done, I'll go back and I'll make the comments or whatever. And then I'm going to play about 7 minutes of the 8.5-minute rant of just Darren Beatty on his own going off about Darren Beatty beating off about about Lex Fridman, right? So, okay, so let's just go to the clips here. So let me pull. All right, I've got them timed.
I would just like to take a moment to honor that it's 2:22 Mountain Time.
And it is, yeah, it's 3:22 here, and today is 2323. And yesterday was 2223.
So auspicious.
So
and allegedly, it's the beginning of a 13 moon calendar wave spell. So what I'm recommending is amp up the manifestations in this moment because it's still 2:22 and you're sharing it.
Yay! Okay, here we go.
If you spent any time on YouTube or Twitter lately, and the chances are you probably have, you likely have noticed that the name Lex Fridman has become nearly ubiquitous and inescapable virtually overnight. Fridman is a podcaster who has amassed a very large audience. largely by conducting long interviews, very long, sometimes 7 or 8 hours, with high-profile names in entertainment, tech, politics, and media. His interviews are especially popular and heavily promoted on YouTube, where his videos regularly amass millions of views. I saw on Twitter someone saying, Lex Fridman is who you wake up to if you fall asleep listening to a podcast on YouTube. The algorithms will shove him down your throat. Fridman is also known for his anodyne, kumbaya, peace, love, and centrism approach to today's most controversial and thorny debates. For our interview segment tonight, though, I'm not talking to Lex Fridman. I hope to one day, I guess. But I'm instead talking to Darren Beatty, a journalist at Revolver News and a former White House speechwriter who has recently taken up the important crusade of deconstructing Fridman's astonishing and perplexing rise in today's media and tech landscape. And while he reserves a few criticisms for Fridman himself, his primary critique is of the algorithmic landscape that seems to constantly promote and serve up this type of content while demoting other forms of less establishment-friendly commentary. I'll also speak to Darren about the House Republicans' newly announced church.
Okay, so that was Glenn's preamble. So we got a little bit of a taste of what his feelings are about Lex Fridman. The entire interview there, the whole show is good, but I will note the start and end of the Darren Beatty interview, and the interaction between he and Glenn is interesting and revealing, and displays, though they try to pretend they're neutral, the same level of disdain that you and I have for this nonsense. And then here, I'm going to play the Darren Beatty rant that led to Glenn having him on for this. So let's pull this one up right now, and we're not going to interrupt it. We're just going to let it play through, and then we will comment and remark.
Certainly throttled, and I'm thinking, this is the ultimate irony of ironies. I managed to survive Twitter under the old FBI, parag awal, the old FBI parag awal and Vijaya, under the Vijaya regime. I survived Twitter under Vijaya, despite, challenging the FBI. January 6th, people who follow my Twitter know that I get a little bit spicy sometimes. And the ultimate irony is I'm going to get banned from Twitter for mocking Lex Fridman. Lex Fridman is the new third rail in social media speech restriction. And it's such a funny thing, it's like people think I have some vendetta against him. It's honestly, and people won't be able to hear my intonation, so they won't be able to get what are the honest signals from the voice. But I honestly have nothing against him. As far as I know, he could be a bad person, he could be a good person. I don't know. It's not about who he is as a person. It's about sort of symbolically the fact that our discourse is entirely fucking fake. And it's increasingly conditioned by these algorithms that shove shitty ass content in your fucking face all the time. And I'm tired of it. And it offends me because, there used to be an internet based on quality of content, and now that's totally shifted, and anybody can relate to me. They're thinking, if you watch any remotely right-wing content on YouTube, to the extent that it exists at all, or even if you're watching a cooking video, I say, you can't watch anything on YouTube without it shuffling over to shove Lex Fridman down your throat. Why? And it's the same kind of mechanism with people like Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson. But at least with Jordan Peterson, his stuff is shoved in your face, but at least there's some degree of discernible talent. At least he knows the performance role he needs to play, and he plays it. And, not everybody could do that, frankly, so there's something there at least. But with Lex Fridman, it's the ultimate test of the algorithm, because there's literally nothing there. First of all, he markets as this MIT professor. He has very little to do with MIT. I would have almost as much, I almost joke, I should literally go into MIT, Just we have Revolver fans at MIT, and there are Darren Beatty fans at MIT, several actually. Just have one of them say, "Okay, I'm gonna I'm gonna let you walk in the classroom. We'll make sure maybe it's an interesting class, maybe it's complex analysis, or maybe it's even honors analysis over the real numbers, or maybe we can get into something really really sexy like." I don't know, differential topology or something like that. Just make sure there are a lot of real arcane symbols on the blackboard. And I'll go there, I'll take my picture in front of the blackboard, and I'll give my spiel about Ray Epps to an empty room. And then I'll change my profile to MIT lecturer. I lectured at MIT. I'm an MIT guy, and every single tweet I send after that, I'm going to say, "Here's a word from MIT. Here's a word from MIT. I don't even live in Cambridge. No, here's a word from MIT." That's more or less what Lex has done. More or less. Okay. There's this rapper who gave a lecture at MIT, and it's so funny. It was the same blackboard, like with the same ooh, these are arcane math symbols. He's a math guy. He's a math guy. Rogan-brained fucking idiots. I don't want to say about Elon because there's a complicated relationship. I like him sometimes. He's so cringe other times, but I do give him credit for being the man in the arena. I do respect that genuinely. But God, how Rogan brain do you have to be to oh, Lex, he's an AI researcher. Oh, he does AI? He codes? He learned to code. Well, where did he learn? He learned at Drexel. He's not involved. His real involvement is with Drexel. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with extremely low-ranked universities. I want to be on the record as saying that. There's nothing wrong with being associated with extremely low-ranked universities like Drexel. And there's nothing wrong with getting into those low-ranked universities because your father happens to teach there, which looks like that was the case with Lex. But at least own it. Don't run from it. Don't run, Lex. Don't run, Lexi. And that's what he's doing. He's running away from his own pedigree in order to market this idea of maybe people are so Reddit-brained and dumb, they see the more dry and boring this guy is, the smarter he has to be. He perfectly conforms to a mid-wit idiot's idea of what a smart person could look like, and maybe that's the secret sauce of his success. I don't know. So maybe there is something there. That would actually be more comforting than I think what the real issue is that he's totally driven by the algorithm. The algorithm loves him. This new sort of completely mechanized society where the algorithm just shoves slop down your face. The algorithm is all powerful. I mean, people have seen these clips of the Boston Dynamics robots. The robots of Boston Dynamics, I'm saying they're designing those to punish people who refuse to watch their daily allowance of Lex Fridman videos. You're not going to get your Neuralink dopamine hit if you don't watch, the latest Lex. If you don't watch the latest Lex interview with Ben Shapiro. On talking about how great it is to be able to talk. That's the future. So uninspiring. Such utter brain death. And so bad for discourse, so bad for humanity. And so that's really what it is about Lex. It's not personal. It's just symbolically, it's such a stark and bleak reminder of how controlled it all really is. So controlled. So that's all I have to say about the Lex issue.
All right. So I think that
Hold on. I'm like swooning. I'm so over the moon to hear everything he just said for the third time.
well, today I had an interesting thought, actually, that like Glenn Greenwald and Darren Beatty might be people that you could write for. That, right? Like you're not welcome at Reality Sandwich anymore or the LA Weekly or whatnot. But
I'm not giving my talent to writing about the fucking sham show. I have novelty to bring into this planet.
Absolutely. But also some of the shit you say about the sham show is pretty funny, right? And right now you're not getting paid for saying it. Therefore you could get paid, right, to say it. And that could fund the more meaningful works and whatnot, right? Like my friend Les, like how I ever met him, Les Lethort, right, he was already like a patron of mine. I didn't even know it, but I saw Revolver News linked to his like Twitter where he was doing the, Ukraine illusion warfare thing, right? So these are people that appreciate this sort of, the type of of humor, right? Like you were swooning. My guess would be he will swoon back, right? So anywho, you like to write. I don't like to write. So It was just a thought, right?
Yeah. I'll feel into it.
And okay, so a couple of things. Everything he said is I completely agree with. It's stuff that we maybe in a different set of words have really covered. And I highly recommend people watch that full interview with Glenn and Darren because they go into more interesting, there's some interesting things brought up there that aren't spoken about here. He touched on them in this rant, but didn't go deeply as he did into the interview. And some of the things said are pretty revealing. Like there's a part where he talks about that there's I don't know if he was saying that this interview occurred on the Lex Fridman podcast or just that he had seen this interview with Susan Wojcicki from YouTube, where she talked about why Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson are algorithmically driven, even though they seem to oppose certain aspects of the woke ideology that's being pushed. And she responded that even though we don't like some of the things they say, they're good for de-radicalizing people who might otherwise go farther and whatnot. So there was an interesting exchange around that. And then there was also an interesting exchange around, there was one other thing he said in this piece we just listened that he didn't go as far into as he did on the thing with Glenn. I can't think of it right now, but I highly recommend people watching that.
I thought it was interesting just in terms of getting a glimpse of your screen. Whenever I watch a YouTube video, on the right-hand side, I'm not kidding. It's like at least the top 3 or 4 are them shoving Lex down my throat. And I'm like, I don't watch him. I don't care. So I really appreciated hearing that.
Yeah. The other thing is, and he's right. Like if you have your YouTube set to autoplay, where it's just as soon as the thing you're watching will go next, if you fall asleep listening to something, which I often do, in fact, I highly recommend if you're having trouble sleeping, just put a Lex Fridman podcast on because you will be asleep like that, gone, like another world, right? But yes, it generally, there's like 3, it's generally Tim Pool or Lex Fridman that you find yourself on if you get pulled into that. I don't have mine set on autoplay, but every once in a while it'll accidentally get switched on and then you'll find that happening. Oh, I know what I was going to say. There's one comment that Darren makes in the interview with Glenn where he basically very delicately implies that Lex Fridman might be a handler, right? And I think it would be interesting if we tried to figure out if he was the first of the crew of he calls it the extended Rogan cinematic universe that includes the intellectual dark web and all that kind of stuff, right? And he goes into some specifics about different people that Joe has on and why like they become accepted because Joe is deferential. He talks about the level of deference that Joe shows to Lex is beyond anything he's ever seen before. And I'm wondering, it would be really interesting to see if Lex arrived here in Austin first. We know about when Elon arrived. We know about when Joe arrived. We know about when Michael Malice arrived. Adam Curry was here first, which obviously casts him in the role as pod father extraordinaire.
Allegedly, Adam is part of the reason why Joe is here now.
I think it's all entirely possible. So Adam's been here for quite a long time though. So I don't know that he was part of like this segment of the operation.
I think he just got pulled in recently.
Okay. So, but it would be interesting to know when he arrived, right? And this is the whole, I mean, if we pay attention, and I still highly recommend for those who haven't, go watch the Congress with Robin Wright Penn. If Austin is the headquarters for fake Hollywood, for CGI derived Hollywood, for cloned, virtual reality, blah, blah, blah. Remember, like Joe early on, like a long time ago when he was in Los Angeles, was one of the first podcasts where people were like starting to talk about like, oh, how crazy it's going to be when there's deep fakes and CGIs. And remember all that? So he was talking about that quite a long time before now, right? And so the whole thing about the Congress is about people selling their image into the system, and then they never participate again, but they're like super rich, and so who cares? And then these controlling factors can really basically do whatever they like with your image.
Yep.
Now, to Darren and Glenn, I love the level of granularity in pulling up the fact that that blackboard in the background was one that was also in somebody else's picture and somebody else's video, and really bringing to the forefront the fact that Lex does not work at MIT. In fact, it's entirely possible he just rented a room and did a talk there. Like, I love that level of research. I highly recommend you check out even just the title of his thesis, which is about, like, I can't remember the exact words that were used. I think it was, let's see if they've updated it so that we can't find this, because the internet works for Lex Fridman apparently, but let's see if we can find it. No, it's still there. Learning of identity from behavioral biometrics for active authentication, 2014, right? So I think that like his project, and remember, they refer to him in that interview as having, like, Glenn Greenwald is fascinated at how Lex, who was an unknown at this time, for his 8th episode, got Eric Schmidt from Google to come on. I do think that Lex does do work for Google machine learning, right? So I completely think that there could be absolutely a project running here based on Lex's thesis, which may or may not be his own. He may just be the man in black with the CIA suit fronting this idea, right? And that's kind of what's going on here. And like, he kind of arrived, and maybe all of these people who have arrived here, either willingly, unwillingly, knowingly, unknowingly, are participating in this. And it's really about, I don't think it's about, at this point, everything being fake. I think it's about intermixing fake stuff with real stuff and seeing if people are able to differentiate so they can start to work out the kinks in their system. Right. Well,
and I also think it's a test in terms of like how much they can push algorithmic, like just the whole algorithmic narrative, and like pushing him in people's faces when he obviously has no personality, nothing interesting to say. So I feel like he's kind of, I just saw another one of your white floating things.
Oh, okay.
But if he's not like a kind of walking chat GPT embodiment, and we've talked about this, they're just seeing how far they can push the fakeness of Lex to see how easy to manipulate the audience is.
And for people who have been following along, either just through Project Kids or certainly more deeply with Playing the Glass Bead Game, I have been talking for a really long time about how I think even just down here in the trailer on the lake, that they're using this as some sort of open air set for augmented reality. There was just another one, right? Okay. And that some days I feel like some of the people out there are not really there. They're like projections, or they're some sort of like mechanized thing. Like, because when I see people walking or running funny, it's like all the people that day. And then like another day, everyone will be looking normal. Like, so it's like, okay, let's send in the clones and see if anyone notices or whatever it is. And this extends to Lex himself. Like, I have recounted here with you and on other shows that, like, you know, I've seen him now, 3 or 4, maybe 5 times on the trail, sometimes with Laura now, before it was just by myself. And there's an inconsistency in his movement.
Totally.
That is not, now, like there's inconsistency in my movement sometimes based on how my body feels. So I'm accounting for that. But this is different. This is a different inconsistency Like generally when one is in pain, it doesn't change their level of coordination. It changes how fast they're moving. What is that?
This is all we have to get through in the next 15 minutes.
We can do it. Let's test our time dilation
We just
skill.
haven't gotten into any of it yet.
Right. So, okay. So just to wind this up though, right? So this inconsistency extends to Lex. He is part of the experiment. He is not controlling this, but it seems like he has been picked as like some sort of like it's the hub on like, and this is a good trick to do because people, the obvious person who critiques this sort of faux, like outside of the mainstream group of people, the Rogan cinematic universe, which I think is great, would say, oh, well, Joe's the hub, right? And like, actually, no, once you've paid any attention to Lex, like you have a whole new appreciation for Joe because there's like a level of something.
I don't agree. I don't think that they I think they're both different hubs.
Yes.
For different levels of we can't deny that Joe's the hub.
But the AI portion is what I'm talking about. Like the trying to see if people recognize the difference between real humans and projected or generated or somehow mechanized or cyborg humans, that hub is with Lex. And that I think that like as we move forward, like Joe becomes part of that universe rather than that universe being subsumed into the Joe universe, right? And people are going to think it's the other way, right? People are going to think it's the other way. But remember how weird it was when he went into his original new set when he got here, that weird red and black thing?
Totally.
Right? Like that was a harsh change. And
they need Joe. Joe gives Lex street cred. Like whatever they're pushing with Lex, Joe is not going to go away.
Right. But what I'm saying is Joe is in service of the reality that the Lex thing is trying to create rather than Lex being in service of the Joe thing. That's my point.
Correct.
Okay.
1,000%.
Yeah. Okay. They need Joe's charisma for sure.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. Okay. My main portion of this done. Let's move on to Dani's incredibly large list and I will practice background time dilation. Here we go.
Babe, we're gonna save Peterson for afterwards, and we're probably gonna run late. Just letting you know. Okay. So, just so you guys know, Emily and I divided it up. So I clipped Lex and Peterson, which we'll get into in afterwards, because I knew this was gonna happen. It was so ambitious to think this was gonna work in an hour. Adorable. Okay, so this is clip number 1. So I think, all right, I'll save my commentary. Okay, screen share.
Don't forget the sound.
Can you give me?
Oh yeah. Yep, I got you. I got you.
Permission, teacher?
Yes. There you go. Permission society, right? This is the nanny state. Can I have permission?
Okay, so this one's queued up. Here we go.
That's really going on. People always do that. But you could really clearly hear from the 9/11 call that there's a crazy person in his house with a hammer, and he's trying to keep the guy calm. Yeah. And he thought the guy was pretty calm up until the moment where the cops came, and you see he has his hand on the hammer. I mean, it's really fucked up. Listen to this because it's kind of...
I think that's enough.
Okay.
Have you seen the Pelosi video that they released?
Yeah, I certainly have seen a portion of it. Like at a certain point, I stopped watching.
Was that your take on the video? Was that your assessment of what they released?
Okay, so this all happened at like the height of the sort of lunacy at my mother's house, right? So this is actually a great way to frame this. So this was the day that they released it was the day that my mom had her biggest rebound. Where like we got there and she had somehow gotten out of the bed she had been unable to move from for days and taken herself to the kitchen table, not once, but twice. She was talking. It was fucking weird, right? Okay. So, and the day before had been the Project Veritas thing, right?
Oh, right.
So the reason that they released this when they did was to detract attention from the Project Veritas thing. That was very obvious for me. And I have a lot of thoughts about the Project Veritas thing, but for the sake of the direction we're heading in right now, I'm not going to get into that. My mother's husband is a rabid left-wing MSNBC nonsense consuming person. So I, for several days, was sitting in the house and he's listening to that in the other room. So I got to really understand like what's going on here, right? And so there was two things I noticed. They don't talk about the Project Veritas thing at all. They just completely ignore that. And then they are showing this Pelosi thing because they need people to stay glued to MSNBC so they don't wander off somewhere else because they happen to have noticed that the Pfizer thing was trending on, right? So the way that they're framing this, like, makes it look one particular way, which is completely opposite than the way somebody who has a different political opinion would frame the same video from the other side.
I think it's completely the opposite than someone who actually watched.
Correct.
The video.
Oh, correct.
It's like me watching a Tweety Bird cartoon and telling you that I just watched O.J. Simpson's police chase.
Correct.
It has nothing to do with what's on that video. Nothing.
Correct. So what I'm saying is the opposing view would actually comment on the thing that was actually going on. Right. They may ascribe a certain set of intentions or some other origin of the entirety of the thing to it that may or may not be verifiable, but they would actually be talking about something that we were seeing.
Correct.
And then this is just like complete, like this goes back to, and she was very smart when she made this point, even though sometimes the way she shares things isn't the most helpful. When Dr. Judy Wood talked about like not listening to what they're telling you, like don't ever listen to what's being said, just watch the video, because there's this trick when they tell you what you're seeing, somehow, even though your eyes are still seeing the same thing you'd be seeing without them talking, it changes it.
Right.
It does something, right? So it's a perfect example of that kind of thing. But yeah, that was insane. But that whole charade, the only reason they even decided, like nobody would put that video out because it's so ridiculous unless you had to make sure that you had a good 48 hours to make sure that a trending thing didn't become such a hot topic that you had to talk about it, that being the Veritas thing.
Yeah. So that has me thinking they must have, like, obviously, because Lex is so part of it, and it's probably why they're both living in Austin, but it was like, hey, we need Joe to put out a bunch of disinformation, so can you come on and just pretend to be having a conversation about other things? That felt more more the agenda in the Lex interview than in the other ones. And the piece, and I didn't clip this, but I don't know if you noticed in the beginning when they were talking about Chat GPT and what it was going to do, and then Lex pointed to like, well, if you're bad and you're spreading misinformation like Hunter S. Thompson, and I was like, why would that be the name that you go to?
I know why.
Because he's my hero?
Yes. Right? Like 100%. So this is where like there's little, like Dani and I were having this conversation, and this is like definitely like in the huge El Sol persona for each of us, right? We've come to the conclusion that these people, like they're very fond of us. They have tremendous respect for us. And there's little gives throughout all of these interviews, not only that they're paying attention and that we're helping them problem solve their holes in their story, but also they feel like, you know, we should throw them a bone and confirm to them that they're right about this. Like when they're almost right, but not quite, give them a clue to like go look over here, but pretend you're looking right. So we've decided that there's a rhythm, or let's say an algorithm that they're communicating to us through, that once we figure out, maybe we can graph it and diagram it. And then we know that we only have to listen to like the sentence said every 36th minute of the podcast, and we can have a lot more time for our personal lives, right? I think that there's going to be, there's going to be a pattern, a Morse code of sorts, right? Yeah. But I know because I can read that Hunter S. Thompson is your hero, like in almost every profile that has ever been done of you, in any place that you were once a hero and are now just like, ooh, yeah, we don't talk about her. Like there's some part about saying that, like when you read Hunter S. Thompson and you wanted to become a journalist, and that's part of your, right? So that makes no sense what he said. Hunter S. Thompson never like stated that he was like saying anything that was true. So why someone would point to him as like a purveyor,
not alive.
Right.
Alive for a long time.
Right. But it's not like someone who there's ever been a question about whether this person is like a reporter of the facts in the news or whether somebody was taking creative psychedelic liberties with the way that they reported reality. Right. Like this is a person who is like, I took chlorophyll or what was the thing that makes you like pass out? He's like, chloroform. I took chloroform before I did this interview or whatever. Right. Like he purposely disqualified himself from being taken seriously in order to be able to say things that were true. So to call someone like them a disinformation agent is like, right, a purveyor of misinformation that Chat GPT needs to delete from its lexicon. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? The only answer is you.
Okay, I'm so glad that you heard that as well, because I was like, is this just like my own personal simulation that is hearing this? Because of all the people you're gonna name, that's the one. Okay, and I didn't clip this, but I mentioned this to you, how often Lex will say, it's all about love. We have to believe in love. And it's like, it doesn't really line up with the personality that he doesn't even have. Like, it never makes sense. It's so incongruous. And given that this show was such a big push towards AI, automation, genetic engineering, I feel like they're shoving that through his own operating system to make it seem as though like the techno-fascist enslavement future is loving because their poster boy for it keeps repeating the word love.
Right. So I think there's a couple of things here. So first of all, I only got to listen to the first hour of the Lex Fridman thing, but that part was included. So I'm glad I got to hear it. But I heard enough of that to really hear this sort of thing that I noticed in the little bits of each of the other interviews that we're going to talk about, some in the second hour, that I started to notice this really weird thing. And then I thought about it. And I was telling you this before the show today, that being of average or slightly above average intelligence, Joe is still more intelligent than 98% of the people he interviews. And this is part of some kind of weird shaming ritual for him to have to pretend that these dunces are smarter than him and then to have to defer to them or kiss up to them or butter up to them. And it isn't that he doesn't like enjoy aspects of that, but I was saying it's kind of like when they would make like Eddie Murphy get an address or whatever, or Dave Chappelle, Dave Chappelle wouldn't do it, but whenever they try and get yeah, I saw it, right? So it's the great lint confirmer of reality. So I think that this is these people are dumb. Most of these people that are on there are like not that smart, or they're not necessarily dumb, but we're not talking about the people that are we are being told are of extreme intellect and thought leaders are so average. They're so the algorithmic nonsense that Darren Beatty was talking about. That just became very clear from this conversation. But to your point, and we're going to talk about this some on the other side, and in just a minute, I'm going to look through a few comments before we wrap this.
No, we're going late because we have to get through at least 3 more of these clips.
Oh, then pull them up. I thought, okay, pull it up. I thought you said you weren't going to pull the clip.
We're not even close to done.
Go to the clip. Okay, go to the clip.
Cool. Because this was such a disinformation heavy episode. Like, this was different, actually. And I know you're probably not going to finish watching it, but they were running so much through this one. We have to get through it.
Well, they didn't stay on topic at all. They just kept shifting from one op to the next op. They were doing that even in the first hour that I watched. So go ahead.
Totally. Okay. So next one.
To create a narrative right now, I would launch a bunch of bots making up anything about Bill Gates and it'll stick.
Yeah.
There's a lot of suspicion about Bill Gates.
Yes.
The problem to me is, I'm not making any statements, but the problem to me is possible that Bill Gates has actually brought more positive to the world than almost any human being who's ever lived. Like, depends on the conspiracy.
Let's just pause. I just want to take that in. We'll get to what he's going to say in a moment, but just the largesse of that hyperbole. Okay.
Theories you believe, the amount of funding he's invested in helping people in Africa, helping cure disease and malaria and so on is humongous.
It's 2022. This has been debunked from every possible angle. If by helping people in Africa from malaria, he means rendering them paralyzed, infertile, or dead, then he's spot on. But I mean, a kindergartner with a laptop knows more about Bill Gates than this ridiculous statement. But
yeah, That's a ridiculous statement. And it's interesting that he says that in the same week that it actually seems like most of the mainstream media is turning on him at this point, right? They're dunking him. But I don't know if what we just heard was a tacit admission that he launched bots to create fake news about Bill Gates to muddy the waters, right? Because that's what they always use to demonize conspiracy theorists, is they put some bullshit out there that actually isn't true. People fall for it because it's a sexy, it's one that seems really appealing. And then they use that to demonize all the other ones who are right about all the other ones, right? So did he just acknowledge that he's done that? But also, I am of there's a lot of stuff going on with Bill Gates right now, but there was that really interesting interview clip, that the interview that happened while he was in Australia, where he acknowledged the vaccines were terrible after he divested his stocks, but made a lot of money, right? And then he showed up at the final of the Australian Open to watch Novak Djokovic, right? Novak Djokovic, right? Like, and Djokovic won and gave a very interesting speech afterwards. So I don't know exactly what's going on there, but in terms of some of the op, like, I'm starting to become of the feeling that he's the intentional Billy Goat put out there to hide other people who are actually doing way more nefarious. The person that
yes, of course. He's the fall guy for this.
He's the fall guy.
He's the fall guy. He's just funding it. But I think the ridiculousness of defending him with this particular person
Correct.
is so embarrassing. There's a little bit more, so let me just play the rest of it, and then we'll finish the Gates part.
Okay.
So it's sad to me that I'm not saying anything about Bill Gates, but it's sad to me if Bill Gates, if none of those conspiracies are true, like most of them are not true, that we're attacking him.
Most of them are not true. How does he know that most of them are not true? He's clearly done no research on Gates. He doesn't know anything about Gates, but all right, I'll just play the rest of it.
And giving SBF a pass until SBF got really screwed. And
I think the only reason why they're attacking him was because he was connected to the pandemic when it came to his support of vaccinations, and then B,
so was everybody.
But B, he had a formidable investment in BioNTech, and that's something that he dumped recently before their stock plummeted, and he made a shitload of money. I think he made like 10x on his return, something crazy like that.
He made 10x on his return, and he bragged about making 80x on just the vaccines at Davos a couple years ago. So I don't know what the fuck that just was. The audacity to even try to pull that off. I mean, I give them props. They clearly have big balls if they think that's going to work on us.
Okay, so I just want to clear up real fast. Of course, he's the fall guy, but I think I know who they're positioning him to stand in front of, and and block. And that is Larry Ellison of Oracle, because Oracle is all over this in a way that doesn't get anywhere near as much attention as it should. And for me, because my whole world revolves around tennis, the shift from Bill Gates being associated with Roger Federer to Bill Gates being now associated with Rafael Nadal, to the point that not Rafael Nadal said he conferred with Bill Gates about everything he should do during the pandemic and whatever, is to switch the relationships that I say about the tech magnates and the tennis players to switch that connection publicly, because I have Nadal paired with Ellison, who's really running the show, right? And who doesn't do as many public faux pas as Bill Gates does, right? But has got his fingers in all kinds of nasty little pots.
For sure. And I feel like, Gates has been set up to be the fall guy since, we figured that out in 2020. But I just want to be clear, since my first task on the documentary that shall not be named was to put together the Bill Gates dossier. His whole antitrust criminal shit beforehand, the whole Gavi thing, being thrown out of India. Yeah,
that's how he got this job, was to get out of his antitrust, going to jail for that. They hired him to do this.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so this is just absurd. Event 201. I mean, Joe, shame on you. Come on. I mean, it's just a little bit embarrassing.
It's embarrassing.
Okay.
Next one.
So next one.
And Dani, we have good news.
What's good?
Laura just came in and informed me we got our first ever super chat. So as soon as we're done with the list, we will go check out the super chat and respond to any question or comment that came with. Thank you, Stylar, for being our first super chatter. Okay.
Is it Stylar? Thank you so
Stylar.
much.
Yes.
Okay. So there is a lot of Elon butt kissing on this. So here's just one piece that I think is important. It's a couple seconds before. I can't get it as exact on Spotify, so.
Buy it and sell it and manipulate the price.
It's very difficult. It's extremely difficult because of the distributed nature of it. You can fuck with it from the inside. And that's why you have cryptocurrency scams. You have like leaders of certain cryptocurrency communities. And that's why people are big proponents of Bitcoin, because there's no head. You know, the guy who created it is no longer here. It's much more distributed in that way.
Is he no longer here? Is he amongst us?
It's probably
Lex?
Elon Musk. Oh.
Boom. Elon Musk invented Bitcoin, according to Lex.
Okay. But just so you know, he said almost the same line about Bitcoin that Adam said, which will be part of our conversation in the next hour at the same time. So this is the new script to roll out, that only Bitcoin can be trusted because there's no head and it's more distributed and more whatever, right? Okay.
That was it. There's nothing. I just wanted it to be clear that this is what they're pushing. The Elon thing is big. So I'm skipping a bunch of these, but there's a lot of defending Fauci, which is odd, and even Joe defends Fauci.
I'll tell you, I know why. But I'll tell you what, but let's build the suspense.
I'm skipping that clip because I don't care. I'm being mindful of our time. Do you want to do the Fauci thing before I get into the next?
So I'm
one?
just gonna. I think this. I'm gonna lay it down after we get into some of the Peterson thing on the other side.
Okay,
right?
cool.
But
Cool.
we're shifting to a new part of the pandemic sham operation kind of thing, and sort of finding love and forgiveness and religion is going to be part of it. And so I will be talking about that
Everything.
in the other segment. Yes.
Religion a go-go.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so this part is very important because, like I said, that we cannot underestimate the importance of this Lex interview to seed and amp up a lot of their nonsense. Okay, so here's the next one. Here we go.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think evolution and monkeying with the evolution is a part of evolution. I think it's a natural course of progression for the way the human curious mind works and its ability to manipulate things around it, whether it's manipulate environments and structures to survive the elements, or whether it's manipulating electricity and frequencies to send signals and videos through the sky. Whatever the fuck it's doing, it's trying to always do a better version of that. And I think that manipulating genetics is a part of evolution. I think it's just a natural part of evolution. We just think of it as something.
That's the basic gist.
Yeah. So this this is part of softening the Pfizer scandal as well.
Oh, I didn't even, of course.
I haven't seen that clip till just now, but yes.
I can't believe I didn't put that together. But I mean, I just did a solo podcast last week. And of course, this is a big chunk of what my new book is about, you know, the masculine driving culture into the fucking toilet and thinking that putting chicks on top of driving culture into the toilet is progress in the return of the divine feminine. And this is exactly that thing, that like technological driving forward at all costs, no thought about how nature actually works. No, genetic engineering, it actually doesn't have anything to do with human evolution. And I would guess that Joe in his heart knows that, but is being forced to push this nonsense?
Well, I think he's playing a particular role here that I don't want to give away the candy shop before we, get to it, right. But he's playing a particular role here. And this is going to be and this is often the role that a comedian plays, is like a lot of people who can't agree or get along about anything else can laugh together. Right. And so he's going to be Joe is going to be the master synthesizer of all of this. And it's going to be under this sort of guise of like, you know what, I'm going to like turn the other cheek. I'm going to be the bigger person. I'm going to offer the olive branch. I'm going to assume the best. I'm going to not ascribe intention to things, right? It's going to be all of that kind of stuff. And I think some of that is just in.
Oh, I thought that was a big one.
Okay, so it went in front of my face on the screen, but it did not go in. I didn't see it here in my reality. I only saw it on the screen.
Weird.
Okay. The lint UFOs, man, I'm telling you, you can see them, right? Like you can see them on some radar screens, but not the others, right? So, okay. So I think some of this is innate to his personality. I think he is a person who doesn't really, I think he grew up in a chaotic family household and doesn't like there to be not getting along and conflict and whatever. But I think like some of the level it's had to go to is probably like, I don't really want to have to do this, but you know, this is part of the role I'm playing. And so, yeah.
I think you're really spot on with the Pfizer piece. And it hadn't been top of mind for me how much this show is meant to distract and detract and the Pelosi. So I think that's spot on. Okay, last clip. We're sacrificing a bunch. But this is the last one. Here we go.
There's a lot of amazing development, but Mars, I worry about how singular is Elon Musk in this world.
I mean, what would happen? What are the options?
So we got to pause on that just because for as many times as Lex kisses Elon's ass in this show, it's like, is Elon about to come on next? Like, they're seeding something. It's as much ass kissing as Joe's going to get from Jordan and Adam, as we'll discuss in afterwards, but it's now being deflected towards Elon. Okay.
Options if he wasn't here. Would it stop dead in its tracks? That was the thought about the initial Apollo missions, is that those people aren't there anymore, right? So the initial, like, there's the people have always had this question: why haven't we gone back to the moon? You know, there's conspiracy theories that we never went in the first place, and then there's also people that say no, those people that had the singular obsession to beat Russia, they don't exist anymore. They're not there anymore. The Cold War doesn't exist anymore. They burned up a lot of money doing this, going back and forth, and then they just stopped. And those people that got there, they're not around anymore. You'd have to literally relearn it.
Okay, I love this. Joe's debunking of why we haven't gone back to the moon in 50, 60 years is just because we lost interest, or those people aren't here. I
don't remember. Wasn't there a time? There's just so many things that he's forgotten his history on. But wasn't there a time when he was questioning the moon landing and he was like, okay, all right.
It's just the conspiracy theorist that he's paid to marginalize.
Okay, so this makes me wonder a couple of things, right? So Elon Musk is very obsessed with Mars, and lots of people, you know, whatever, like that SpaceX nonsense and whatever. But if this is setting up a built-in excuse as to why we'll never get to Mars, like if Elon shifts his focus, or if Elon gets removed from the stage because he tweeted a bad thing or something like that, then that completely explains why we'll never get to Mars, and they'll not have to explain the fact that maybe space doesn't exist or doesn't exist in the way we think it exists, and it's not someplace far away. It's just exists here at a different vibration, or maybe it's just a few hundred miles below you in the Santa Fe Desert, or whatever it is, right? I mean, in the New Mexico desert. So it's interesting that they're going, okay, all of these things, these impossible stories that we've been fed for our entire lives, they're all actually ascribable to a single person or a single group of beings. And the fact that we can't prove them anymore is because the people that cared about them aren't with us. And look how sad it is when people die.
As though NASA, I mean, let's pretend NASA is what they tell us it is. They don't have a whole department. They don't have records. They don't have, it was just the couple people. It's just Elon. It's so odd to me. Okay, so that's all I have from this Lex shit show.
Okay, so in just a minute, we're going to move over to the afterwards salon. But before we do, I'm going to check out the, let me see if I can manage doing two things at once here. Okay, how did this, I don't even know where I can't even see, where is my, where on my, oh, there it is. Okay, here we go. All right, so there's lots of comments. We have 100, 101 people here. Thank you guys so much. It's really inspiring how many people have showed up. We don't give a lot of notice. I haven't figured out how to like pre-schedule it because of the way we're actually doing the live stream through the Zoom room. So I appreciate. So Sylar just made the donation and didn't have any comment or question. There's a nice little, oh, she's giving us a cup of coffee. I see. It's a little GIF giving us a cup of coffee. So let's do this. I can't go back through all the things. So all of our friends are here, James and Les and Jana and Kat and Laner and Chris, and like all the homies are in the house. If anybody has a brief comment or question that they would like responded to in all capital letters, you have 30 seconds to put it in the box. And if it's interesting, we'll answer. Oh, here we go. We got another super chat from Smarmy Vibe Smears. And they're just glad they finally caught a live show. Yay! Awesome.
Because I see that Sebs is here from Doom's Dungeon.
Hi, Sebs.
She had me on her show this week. Check it out. It was really fun. And be sure to subscribe to Doom's Dungeon.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe we should have her on when we do a guest on here, because she's definitely looked at some interesting things. I checked out her channel a few weeks back before all craziness broke loose in my reality. Rally Smalls says tennis ? Well, I don't know what you want me to say about tennis. It's a sport where they hit the ball back and forth, and right, there we go. Why does Emily like tennis? I wasn't trying to be an asshole. Laura just yelled at me, don't be. I didn't know what she wanted to know. Why do I like tennis? Okay, so I like tennis because tennis is the perfect athletic embodiment of the sacred geometry of space, time, and sound. It's physical chess. It requires an understanding of strategy, geometry. It has the battle of the will. It's got athletic fitness, power. It's got all the things. And then it definitely has a lot of history in the esoterics. And there's all kinds of interesting stuff that you can get into with that. But I find that the characters, the main characters in the stage play that is the tennis reality, are amazing archetypes for things that are going on in our world. And I use tennis as like a model city to predict like what's going to happen. Like I read the tea leaves in the tennis match, and then I know what the next step on the world stage is going to be. And I just like watching it. I don't know. I'm a terrible tennis player. I can't even really hit the ball across the net, but it's completely different than gymnastics. And I was a good gymnast, but I don't even really enjoy watching that as much anymore. I'm obsessed with tennis. So I hope that is a satisfactory answer. All right.
Great answer. Wait, I love this that Elon is HP Blavatsky. Whoever shared that, I want more intel for sure.
All right, yeah, and I think Tulsi Gabbard's brother or friend or something is in the house. Maceo Gabbard. How many people actually fall for the Rogan op? Well, this is the part that's like, this is the part that's different. I think there's like a lot of people that somewhere inside of themselves feel that it may be an op, but they're too turned on by like the parts of the op that they really like, that they like override their better sense. And then there's just a lot of people who fall for it. But it's one of these things like he and like Tim Pool, I can't put Lex Fridman in the same category because I just can't even stand, like it's a different level. I can't stand Tim Pool. But I still find myself hitting play on those videos sometimes for some weird reason that I cannot resolve inside of myself. And it's the same with Joe Rogan, but different. It's like equal, but a different stimulus that keeps me pushing the button. But I think that's why these people exist. They have figured out from studying people's behaviors online, like how to serve these things up in this way that will get most people not to question reality, but also get even the ones who do to still play into it anyway. And I'm as much a victim of that as anyone. All right. Or a sucker, maybe a sucker of that. Okay. Now they're arguing about whether Joe Rogan is a thumb or a toe. I like it. All right. I think this is what we do. Okay. We are going to, let me see if I can do this like at all smoothly here. I'm going to, oh shit. I just went to the wrong window. Hold on a second. Okay. I am going to put the link. We are going to take a short intermission, and I am going to put a link in the chat box here for a free month over on wordspodcast.locals.com. So if you are not yet a supporter over there, you can enjoy a free month on the house and join us. We're going to take about a 5 or 7 minute break. And then we're going to be over there. I'm almost going to put it in the Zoom chat. Okay, I have to remember what I'm doing here. Go into the YouTube chat.
Great.
Here we go. Right. So this is the link for a free month as a supporter over on our locals page. And if you do that, you will find a link to our afterwards salon Zoom room, where we will be at 425 Central, 325 Mountain, 225 Pacific, and I guess that would mean 525 Eastern. We will be over there dishing up the rest of the nonsense and then taking your comments and questions and interacting a bit, and all of that, getting all of that done in time to get Dani to her appointment. So
that's right. I forgot about that.
thank you for joining us. This was lots of fun. Thank you to our inaugural super chatters and all of the participation and play in the chat box. We will see you guys on the other side. Last word, Dani.
Bye, guys.